Everyone has a purpose. Some of us find that purpose early in life, and others, it takes trial and error for you to receive what is meant for you.
The opportunity is when preparation meets luck, and you got to capitalize on your opportunities. A limiting belief that I think everybody has because they're linking their confidence and their ability to what they know now. Link your confidence not to your knowledge base or your results at that time, but link it to your ability to figure things out.
You pride yourself on 100% client satisfaction rate, and I doubt in your industry that that's very common.
It's all about just having the right systems in place so that no matter the size of the case, every client is getting 100% customer attention and they feel like that their case is the biggest case to you, because for them it is. I will take a case all the way through trial if it maximizes the recovery for them, even if it's not the best business decision for me. It's the golden rule with anything, right? How would you want to be treated if you're in that situation? When you take your focus away from making money and you put it to just adding value, just learning and adding as much value as you can, and you stick with it over time, not right away, because time is part of the recipe, the money will end up chasing you.
Welcome back to Spartan Leadership. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick. And you hear me say it often, everyone has a purpose. Some of us find that purpose early in life, and others, it takes trial and error for you to receive what is meant for you. For Matt, his purpose was delivered early and right to his front step. With us on the line from New York City, you can see those tall buildings in the background. Principal and trial attorney, husband and father of three. Please join me in welcoming Matt Segal. What's up, brother?
What's up, Josh? Thanks for having me. I'm really pumped to be on a podcast and talking to someone at your level. Again, thanks for having me. One quick correction. At this time, I only have one child, but maybe we'll work our way to three soon.
Oh crap! We got that screwed up. Hey, you'll work your way to three. You got that 10-day vacation to Greece coming up here.
Exactly. So that's the plan, to be honest. So maybe
all right.
If we get twins in there, we can get that 3 number.
Lots of practice, buddy. Lots of practice.
Yep.
All right. So I want to preface before we get into everything is, and this is good because I don't want you to take this wrong because we talked about this, is like, I didn't want to do an episode with a trial attorney. So it had nothing to do with Matt. I have a specific problem with trial attorneys based on some previous experience. You've heard me, if you've been a longtime listener, talk about how I was sued completely out of the blue and completely erroneously. And I had a 2-year battle, and that person hired what I called an ambulance chaser, AKA trial attorney, to come sue me, meaning they didn't have to pay that person. That person only got paid if they won or if I settled, right? So I had this particular disdain in my mind and mouth about trial attorneys. And that's why Matt and I actually had a great conversation about it. And there's really 2 sides of the trial attorney side of things. And I also want to make sure we get into the slippery slope that you face that we talked about as well, because it's just one of those things where there's, just like any profession, people of integrity and people that lack integrity.
Yep.
So we'll get into that a lot, but I wanted to preface the show today that hey, I really didn't want to do this, except Matt won me over because he's actually one of the good ones. So Matt, let's get back to my opener. You were destined to work in law, and I believe that to be true based on your unique start in the industry. Tell our listeners where it all began for you.
Yeah, for sure. And thanks for that intro. And I look forward to talking about that because it's important for people to hear. So anyway, back to my my upbringing and stuff like that. So my father was an attorney, uncle's an attorney, my cousins, older cousin's an attorney. I now have 2 other cousins that are attorneys. So I think we now have 1 doctor. So my grandma, I guess, is pretty happy about that. But that's actually two different sides of my family. But needless to say, I guess it's in the blood, so to speak. But I had some doubts. I was a finance major in college. My whole goal was to try to make a lot of money. And I was thinking finance is the way. I'm not sure if I'm going to be an attorney. And then, I had a conversation with my dad about that. And he said, listen, you could always do anything else with a law degree. Why don't you go, get your law degree and then see what happens and go from there. And so went to law school, did really well in law school, but sort of taps into my story down the road. I didn't go to one of these top law schools. I didn't go to Yale or Harvard or even a tier below that. And so when my time came and to graduate, and after I passed the bar, and it was 2008, 2009, we know what the economy was like in that time. It was slim pickings, and so even the finance world, wasn't so great then. So, I decided I was going to stick with law. And so I'll try to make a long story somewhat short here. And I've told the story a bunch, so I like to fine tune a little bit, but I was supposed to start a job at doing landlord-tenant law, which is basically either evicting people or trying to get people from being evicted in New York City, which is insanity in terms of the quantity of buildings and cases that are like that. And so I had no desire to do that, but I had to start working. And so that weekend I went clothes shopping to get some clothes for the new job. And I got a call from someone who got my resume. And that was a woman whose father was looking to hire an associate attorney. And so I said, all right, let's see what happens, because I don't want to do what I'm going to start doing. So let's see what can I do here. And this was in the field of personal injury law, which was what my father and my uncle did. But I did not want to mix business with family. I just know that doesn't go well a lot of times. So I wanted to blaze my own path. And so I ended up going to this man's house, which was on the North Shore of Long Island, and maybe one of the top 3 or 4 wealthiest towns in the country. It was on a nice compound on the water. You could see the Empire State Building from his house. So very impressive. And, he opens a door, and it's an 86-year-old man and his wife. And so they interview me, and I come to learn who he was. And I have some of, the books he wrote behind me. He literally wrote the textbook on, being a trial lawyer. It's called Reflections of a Master Litigator, one of them. So he's famous. I didn't know that. He's a famous guy. He was partners with F. Lee Bailey for a while. And, he was showing me all the books, all of his accolades and stuff like that. And he was telling me, I'm going to set you up with your own law firm in the Empire State Building. You're the luckiest person to be here. And so I said, all right, let's do that. Called the landlord-tenant lawyer, said, I'm out. Started working for this man. Again, 86 years old. I was living in the city already, so I was reverse commuting. And I just said, hey, let's see what happens, because, again, he's a very, very famous guy. He's got all the accolades. And so I started working for him. And then I learned that my first job was not to work in his firm, but was to break up his firm. So he wanted me to be sort of the lawyer that would handle an arbitration, breaking up his existing firm and dissolving it, and giving the other guy all the cases. So that was my only case. And then the other case we had was he had his own medical malpractice case where his eye was injured. And so those were the 2 cases that I was working on. My client and my boss and my boss. They were the only cases, and he was our only client. I was working out of his house. The maid was picking me up from the train station every day, feeding me, making me breakfast, giving me lamb chops and salmon for lunch. It was a really surreal experience, because it was not what any of my other friends were doing. Yeah. And so I worked for him for a couple of years, actually, and it was very tedious. It was very intense for most of the time. Granted, he went to Florida for 6 months of the year, and I was just me in his house. It was really, really unique. And so, to make a long story short, from him, because it really was a unique start, and I thank you for mentioning that, because I didn't just go off and start working at a firm and was thrown into the fire and started, learning that way. I learned from this man who, again, was very famous. He had, many, many multi-million-dollar awards. He wrote the front page of the New York Law Journal every day for 30 years. So he's very well known. But I learned from him 2 things. One was the value of over-preparation. And the extent that he prepared, he was very famous for this, was almost bordering on insanity. So something that could take me now or any other lawyer maybe an hour to look over, to edit, to revise and send out, he would work on for a month. So like a regular letter, he would take a month to do. And he would revise it 15 times, and he'd give it to me, and I'd say, that's the second version that we did that you're going back to. And he just had this process where he just wanted to be so prepared. In talking about his medical malpractice case, it was an eye case. So there were all these records all these ophthalmology records that we didn't know what any of them meant. They were symbols, they were this. And he spent days, weeks, months going over a page of the record to understand what every single line meant, every symbol, every notation, where I know now most lawyers, they'll defer to an expert. They'll call an expert and say, hey, what does that mean, by the way? And that was just one piece of what he did. He wanted to know everything. And so at the time, I thought that was such overkill. Why are we spending so much time doing this? But now that I'm a trial lawyer, when I go into trial and I've taken that work ethic with me, at least as much as I could, and I'm over prepared, whereas my adversary may be looking at the file for the first time, a week or two before, the value of that is worth, every day I spent at his house thinking I was not doing anything, it's paid off in spades, because now I go into my trials and I know everything backwards and forwards. So I can react like that when something that I did not prepare for, so to speak, an argument that I didn't anticipate or a judge's ruling that I didn't anticipate, when that happens, because I know everything so well, I can react to it quickly. And the value of over preparation, it's never time wasted. It's always going to pay off. And so that was one thing. And then the second thing, I didn't know at the time, but I was making very high level connections as a young guy right out of law school. There were guys coming to his house that were, he was the first president of the New York Lawyers Association decades ago. But one by one, more former presidents would come in, and they just respected him so much. They wanted to talk to him and just see what he was doing and stuff like that. And I'd meet these guys one by one. And when I, left, I would cross paths with them at networking events or in court or anything like that. And they would remember me, say, hey, Matt, how you doing? Are you still working for, Mr. Broder was his name, and stuff like that. And so those connections also paid off in spades, because again, it was very high level guys. Some of them have referred me cases when it wasn't, as big for them. So again, that was the start of my career, which was super unusual. It was 3 years there. Sometimes it went like that. Sometimes it felt like forever. From there, I then bounced around to some different law firms, learning what to do and what not to do, until, again, long story short, the most recent law firm I worked for was a guy who, we always knew he wasn't the best lawyer. He was a little bit weird. We walk into work one day, the front page of the New York Law Journal was that his license was suspended. So again, long story short, all of these clients needed to get a new lawyer because he was the sole owner of the firm. And I looked around and I'm like, wait a minute, this is the opportunity that I've been waiting for. We always hear that the opportunity is when, preparation meets luck, and you got to capitalize on your opportunities. We were both members of Arte. That had just been formed, Arte. I had that burning desire to do something on my own. I did not want to be an employee forever of a firm that, doesn't run well, doesn't pay well, anything like that. I knew doing it on my own was the way I was going to make a difference and make the money that I wanted to. And when that opportunity came, I just was ready to capitalize. And so, after a couple of weeks of this guy not telling his clients they needed a new lawyer, when they called in, I finally said, hey, listen, you got to find a new lawyer. And one by one, because I treated them the way they wanted to be treated throughout the whole time that they were at that firm, they said, I want to go with you. And so that's how I started my firm, with about 30 years or so of those cases of the clients who wanted to come with me when they needed a new lawyer. And if you want, we could talk more about that. But long story short, that's basically how we got started.
Man. So first of all, if you guys don't notice, if you don't have any East Coast friends, anytime a New Yorker says a long story short, it's never going to be short. Yeah. But I do believe, Matt, that's the shortest he can make it. But it's just funny. It's just funny. Any New Yorker that I've ever had a relationship with, anytime they say long story short, is definitely not going to be a short story.
Yeah, it's probably short story long.
Short story long. Either way. So two of the things I picked up from you there, because they're good principles. You started from the bottom, got to the top, and the two principles were through over preparation and networking.
Yep.
And those are great principles for any entrepreneur and really any hustler. Like if you're an intrapreneur, and what I mean by intrapreneur, if those aren't familiar with the term, is you're working inside of a company. Those are great ways to get noticed by your leaders. Great ways to get noticed by your bosses. That's how you get promotions. That's how you make yourself indispensable.
Yep.
So those are great tools. Now, I don't think that over preparation in everything you do will lead to because you can overwork a certain, you got to figure out what is necessary to over prepare on, what's crucially important. But those are great principles to have learned. So switching gears a little bit to client satisfaction, because you now pride yourself on 100% client satisfaction rate.
Yep.
And I doubt in your industry that that's very common.
No. And so when I started my firm, and I'm in, New York City here with behemoths and unbelievable attorneys and big firms with $1 million marketing budgets per month, I said, how am I going to stand out? And how am I going to, how am I going to attract clients to choose me instead of those types of lawyers and firms? And it all went back to the reason why I wanted to start a firm really in the first place, which was client satisfaction and client service. So, what some people don't understand is in my field, when people come to me, they're in potentially the worst time of their life. They've been seriously injured. They can't work. They can't pay their bills a lot of times, and they don't know what their life is going to be like after this. And so when you sign up with a firm and they promise you things that, we're going to get you a great result. Look at our, we have 1 million cases and stuff like that. We do great by everyone. What you don't know is that most of the time you sign up and then now you're a file on the shelf, and they'll get to you when they get to you. And when they need something, maybe they'll give you a call. And I witnessed it firsthand at 2 of the firms I work with, notably the most recent one where coincidentally, right, his license was suspended because he wasn't running a great firm. But I would finally speak to clients and they say, hey, you never called me back. And I would say, I never even got the message. I'm sorry. If I ever got it, I would call you immediately. And so I recognize that that's a major hole in the space. Even some of the great firms, I get a lot of calls now from clients who want to move to my firm, move their representation, even from firms that I think are great. I just got one last week. I was shocked because I thought that was a great firm. And so what you got to understand again is that these people are in such a bad spot at their life. They're thinking about it 24/7. So while you're thinking about other cases and stuff, you got to understand that they're still worried about how they're going to pay their bills. So you need to, again, it's the golden rule with anything, right? It's how would you want to be treated if you're in that situation? And on top of that, really what I say is, how would I want, if that was my mom, if that was my sister, if that was my wife, if that was my son, how would I want their lawyers treating them? And what it comes down to is being proactive instead of reactive, calling them regularly and saying, hey, listen, I may not even have an update for you as to your case, but I want to know what's going on with you. What's going on with your medical treatment? Is there anything that's concerning you? And so that's how I've really focused my practice. And I say this story a lot, but it's basically like Jerry Maguire. If you've seen that in the beginning, when he's typing up his mission statement about, less clients, more client attention, that's me. He got fired for it, right? Because, in these big corporate environments, they don't want that. They want you more clients, bring in more money, settle cases on the cheap so that, we're not spending more money and we're a mill, so to speak. Whereas, I will take a case all the way through trial if it maximizes the recovery for them, even if it's not the best business decision for me. And so, that's how I've separated myself. I hate that that's sort of become, the trendy thing to say. Everyone says that, but I think the proof is in the pudding. And I mentioned my testimonials and my Google reviews because it's important to me to make sure that it's not 90%, it's not 95%. I try to make it so it's 100% of every client, even if, it's unlikely, but God forbid we don't achieve the success or the result that we wanted to, you're at least going to leave and say, he gave it his all. He always kept me informed, and I have no problem with that. So yeah, I can't, really in every industry, if you focus on that, and by the way, it pays off in spades too, because that's how I get the majority of my cases, and the best cases come from word of mouth, from clients saying, hey, listen, Matt was my attorney. It was great. You should use him too. So it always comes back to you.
So I'm thinking about this. So thinking from your previous experience working with bigger firms.
Yeah.
Talk about how that, it could be just a real brief answer, and how they disseminate what comes in. So let's say they're working on a case that's up to $500,000, and then all of a sudden a case comes in that's worth $5 million.
Yeah. So
are they going to push that down? Are they going to go for the bigger case right away?
Yeah. So yeah, if they come in at the same time, I would think for sure. I mean, good firms have systems for intakes where, when you get a case, there should be a checklist, like a pilot's checklist, right? Making sure everything gets done for the initial setup. They might and probably should have different teams where they'll say, hey, this team handles these level cases, this team handles these level cases, or even within a team, just breaking it down to different attorneys' responsibilities. The firm, again, I don't mean to pick on them, and I'm not going to mention them by name, but the last firm that I was with, again, that I learned what not to do, was just a free for all. It wasn't. Not only was it not, I don't want to say prioritizing, because every client deserves proper attention, but it's, I guess, delegating and systemizing how you're going to handle different levels of cases. So there was none of that there. And so a case that we just settled for $5 million after, vigorous litigation for 4 years, it was a case where it came from that firm where the client wanted to come with me. But at that firm, it was just, it wasn't treated with any difference. And again, I don't mean a difference in terms of client relationships. Every client deserves 100% communication. I mean, you have to recognize where, because a lot of times injuries develop as the case goes. So this man didn't have a spinal surgery until about two years after his accident. So without the proper monitoring, that case just gets treated as if it's a minor case, which is what happened there. So thank God for him that this happened, and we gave it proper attention. But again, to answer your question, it's all about just having the right systems in place so that no matter the size of the case, every client is getting 100% customer attention, and they feel like that their case is the biggest case to you, because for them it is.
Well, that's such great practical advice for any industry, not just trial attorneys. So, right. All right, amazing, brother. So a truly inspiring story from how you started to where you're at with your own firm and being able to lock down some of these big cases for clients that truly need it. It just shows, what hard work, how that'll pay off over time. So I want to rewind a little, because we have a lot of Spartans listening and who are still really kind of early on in their careers.
Yep.
You've been there, small fish in a big pond. I mean, you're in New York City.
Yep.
You entered the industry young, but supercharged. A word I would also use to describe a lot of our younger listeners. They're supercharged with their ambition.
Yeah.
How did you use your age as an advantage throughout your come up?
Thank you for that, because it is an advantage. It really is. I love speaking to, younger entrepreneurs too, and younger attorneys. I'm starting a coaching program for younger attorneys too, because I'm on that, the same mission, because a lot of times it's showed, it's talked about as a weakness. And so, there's two things. One is like, you're going to have more energy and more time than a lot of the older guys. So when I go to court and I'm on trial and I see my adversary, have the gray hair and whatever it is, even if not, especially at a younger age, before I had my wife and child, I know he's got to go home. He's got responsibilities. He's got to pay, more bills than I have. He's got to take care of his kids, whatever it is. I don't. And I'm going to use that as an advantage. I have more time to go back and review stuff and prepare more. I also have more energy. So, I can work, longer hours, or let me say this, I can work more efficient hours. It doesn't have to be longer, but I'm going to have more energy. I can go to the gym and make sure my body's in tuned also. And so I'm going to present better also. So that's just a basic thing that I would tell them, is that use that as an advantage, because even me, I keep a little scruff on my face, because when I talk to a jury, I don't want them thinking, so to speak, hey, here's a young kid, because I look a little bit younger than I am, and what does he know and stuff like that. But what I found, that's not really the case. When you're up there and you have the confidence that you belong, that's all you need. So don't let your age really, deter you from that. Sorry about the siren in the background.
Hey, no, it wouldn't be New York City if we didn't hear a siren, right?
Right. So that's one. And again, just use that energy. Don't look at it as a negative. It's so much of a positive, because you don't know. I hear so many times from the older attorneys, I just got to go home and, and go to sleep. And it's shocking. Granted, there are definitely some older attorneys who are not like that, but you're going to find ways to separate yourself. So that's one. And then the other thing, the number one thing is that, and this is not me, by the way, I'm not Tony Robbins or Ed Milet or any of a guru like that, but I know some of the key things that I've taken from them that have helped me. And one of the main things there is to link your confidence, not to your knowledge base or your results at that time, but link it to your ability to figure things out. And so, when I'll give you an example. When I was going out, again, to decide, should I start my own firm? Should I not? I don't know, because again, there's all these lawyers in the city who have been doing this forever. They know everything. I don't know everything. There's so many things I don't know. What am I going to do if I have a client? I don't know what to do. So that's just a limiting belief that I think everybody has, because they're linking their confidence and their ability to what they know now. But if you link it to your ability to figure things out, and then you realize in your life to get to where you are, you've been able to figure things out, right? There's resources, there's a trial lawyers listserv that I'm on. So I ask them questions. I'm annoying as hell. I follow up a million times on a question. Hey, you didn't really answer this or whatever. And I don't care if people find me annoying, because I'm going to find out that answer.
You're not annoying. Say you're pleasantly persistent.
I guess, yeah, I agree. I agree. Because when people, maybe. But either way, however you look at it, I'm getting my answers, right? And so if you think to yourself, I may not know it, I may not know everything, but I know that I'm going to have the guts and the courage to go take the leap and then figure things out as I go. And you will always basically figure it out. If you make a mistake, that's fine. You'll learn from that too.
Dude, that's such a good lesson.
Yeah.
That's such a good lesson, because you're right. I'm sitting there thinking, because I know a little bit about law, some on the good side, some on the bad side. And, you're a young attorney at one point when you're starting out on your own firm, and you're like, what do I know? Well, the fact of the matter is, if you don't know, the good news is we've got centuries of case law that you can research.
Yep.
There's textbooks. There's, like you said, the listserv. There's probably some mentors that you've had in your life, your father, your uncle. Say, hey, I ran into this. I think that's the answer, but I'm not quite sure. What do you think?
100%.
Like, we're in an information age. What we don't have is a lot of application. And I've said that often on the show, is like, you can find out anything you want to know.
Right.
What you got to do then is apply it.
Yep. So, and
so
one thing you really mentioned that's important is like a mentor or coach. And I had one, and someone that's comfortable answering your questions. They want to see you succeed. If you can get that one or two people, that is so valuable. Because again, you'll get those answers quicker, and you'll feel comfortable in the process.
Yeah, agreed. All right. So whether a career changer or a new face in the workforce, what advice do you have for an entrepreneur preparing to take that same climb you took? So we don't want to make it sound like it's all been sunshine and roses from the get-go. So from the bottom right up to the top, you talked about finding that mentor. Any other piece of advice? Any other, they're thinking about striking out on their own. They're in the entrepreneur, thinking about the entrepreneur space. They're coming right out of school. Do they take that guaranteed salary, or do they bet on themselves?
Right.
What advice do you have for those types of people?
So, coming from, what I already told you, which was that my goal was to get a job where I could make a lot of money, right? And I interned one summer at Merrill Lynch, at their private wealth division, thinking maybe that could be a path to making a lot of money. In law school, I wanted to work at one of these big firms, these big corporate firms that pay, $250,000 right out of law school. Because again, I just wanted to be successful. And how do you think about that? Is typically, financially. Thank God now I did not enter that field, because I know I would have hated it, would not have liked staying up till, 2 a.m. at the office, underlying contracts and stuff like that. And so it's the number one advice I said is forget about the money. Even, coming out, I thought I was going to make, multiple six figures, even six figures. I started out way below that. And I was shocked. I thought, man, I have these skills and these talents. I think I should be making all this money. And so I harnessed that and used that as motivation, like, sort of, I'm going to show them and I'll get to where I need to be. But you got to forget about the money. And this is very cliche. This is another one of the, lessons that a lot of the gurus talk about. But the number one lesson that I will teach to my coaching students is that when you take your focus away from making money and you put it to just adding value, just learning and adding as much value as you can, and you stick with it over time, not right away, because time is part of the recipe, the money will end up chasing you, which is what happened with me. Because now I'm getting calls for new cases with not much marketing because they've heard about the way I treat my clients. And so you have to understand too, that you have to learn. You have to learn all the things that are going to make you successful with where you want to go. And so forget about the money. Just be a sponge when you take that first job and just learn all the things. You know, some people go out on their own right after law school or grad school. I don't highly recommend that. I think that, yes, you should take the leap at some point, but you should learn some of the core functionalities and the basic principles before you do that. But learn, and then go do it, because forget about the money. The money is going to come, but everybody wants it. So you got to understand that some of your competition too, they're so focused on the money, they're going to start weeding themselves out. So if you just try to become the best lawyer you can become, or the best financial advisor, or the best land, gardener, whatever it is, forget about the money. In time, that's going to come. So I think that's the number one lesson for young entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs.
Dude, I love it. I love that so much, because I think it is okay to be motivated by money as you're a young person.
Yeah. What
you got to understand is what Matt just said, is that because I was that same way at 24 years old when I struck out to be a financial advisor and go bet on myself and be on 100% commission, build my business. Same way, I was motivated by money.
Yeah.
You quickly realize it's not about the money.
Yep.
If you have integrity in your heart, anyhow, you realize it's about the people that you're serving. And what's awesome about that is that in almost all cases, if you make it about the people that you're serving and the clients that you're serving and making a bigger impact on this world, following God's purpose for you in your life, you will make gobs more money
100%
than you ever did just trying to chase money.
Right. 100%.
So I love that piece of advice for anyone that's thinking about that. Like, first of all, it is okay to start something because of the money. It is okay.
Yep.
But it will not last if if that's your purpose long term, is about the money. You got to make it about something bigger, and hopefully that's the people that you're serving.
100%. And it's not even just like figuratively speaking, especially like I can just speak for myself. The return is instant, not instant for me, but you could see it practically, because I'll give you an example. So when I take a case to trial, what I think trials are really about is making the jury understand how a person's life has been affected. So I don't get bogged down on the medicine as much as a lot of other trial attorneys. But what helps me there is because of the whole, 2, 3, 4 years that I've been working with this client, I've gotten to know them so well because I'm trying to pour into them, that that client relationship. And so I'm learning about them and I know what they've missed out on. And so when at my closing argument, I can plead and passionately speak with the jury about how my client's life has been affected, the value of the case has been increased. So I'm making that money back in the verdict right away. So, a lot of people hear things like what we're saying and they think, oh, that's woo woo. Yeah, right. But I'm here to tell you, yes, it comes back sort of in that figurative thing, but it also comes back practically right away. And I'm sure other fields of business have the same sort of effect, where when you really provide value and get to know your clients, it almost right away, leads to financial gain as well.
That's so good, man.
Yep.
Timeless lessons.
Yep.
All right. I want to talk about integrity before we close out. Integrity in your industry.
Yep.
Because obviously you and I had a conversation about what happened to me. And just so everyone knows, my case ended a few months ago, and I refused to sign an NDA so I can talk about this. Very purposefully, because this case, really attacked me and my integrity, and it attacked me as a person. And it was over discrimination, where I had a former advisor that decided to lie about me. And basically, you can sue anyone for anything these days. That's the unfortunate piece of our legal system right now, is you can sue anyone for anything. And there's not necessarily a ton of legal recourse in certain situations. So there's one end of the work that Matt does, which is injury, right? And there's some different things. There's also like the civil side of things, which is what I was up against. he hired an ambulance chaser or trial attorney. So that attorney, meaning they're not going to get paid unless either I settle or they win the case. What happened over time, oh, and by the way, deposition, for anyone that's never sat in it, is an uncomfortable spot to be. It's not a great thing. We can get to that in a minute. But what happened with mine is over the 2-year period, as we went through this, and again, these cases take time. So much of Matt's work is very long deferred compensation before he's ever seen a penny of taking on a case. What happened with mine, they quickly realized, I shouldn't say quickly, it was 2 years. But as things started heating up and we were facing the going to actual litigation, they realized they had no case. So then they proposed an offer for me to settle. And this is where the integrity piece for me came into play. And I started talking to Matt and I was like, where do you cross the line in being an attorney where you realize that my client lied about this person, but we've put 2 years of work into this, so we're going to go and try and settle it and get paid on this. Like, they realize they have no case, no chance of winning in litigation, but they're going to make me, and instead of dropping the case, instead of doing the right thing and saying, hey, Josh, in this instance, there is no proof he did anything that you said he did by anyone that we've ever talked to in this case. And instead of dropping that, we're going to say, you know what, Josh, we're going to make an offer to your attorney that says, you pay us this and we'll walk away. Right. And obviously there's some negotiations, and I'm very much abbreviating the story, but the bottom line is they made a choice to not drop it, even though they knew they had a case, but to go after me for money, hoping that I'd settle. Yep. And that's where I'm like, man, in any other industry, integrity wise, that doesn't work. So I asked Matt, so talk a little bit about that path. Like, at what point do you decide in your civil litigation or trial attorney path that you're like, I'm going to start accept, because you had a good answer when we spoke. I'm going to accept going down that path versus actually doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Like selling your soul to the devil. Like,
yeah. So, it's integrity for sure, because you should not be bringing frivolous cases. And when that a case that you may have brought is frivolous, then you should be dropping it. And you should be saying, this isn't a proper case. My client lied to me or whatever. But even more than integrity, every state has their own ethics rules. And so that's codified in some of the ethics rules where they talk about, again, attorneys shall not bring cases that they know are not legitimate. And so that doesn't happen too often. And so you can choose what kind of lawyer you're going to be. We try to vet out all of our cases right away. And we try to make sure they're all legitimate. And, I would say most of them are. Even, I think there's a difference between, sort of illegitimate cases like what you went through and weak cases. So you can have a case where maybe someone got into a car accident, it was the other person's fault, they were injured, it may not be so serious, and they bring a lawsuit. So in that case, that's just sort of a weak case. And I typically don't really have any problems with that. But why I, can sympathize with you on this and whoever's going through that situation, so personally, is because I'm going through it right now. And so I understand the flip side of it too, and which is what makes me not want to ever bring frivolous lawsuits also. And so, not to get into all the details, but my wedding was supposed to be March 14th, 2020, which was like 3 days after, the major COVID, D-Day where national emergency was declared and all that. And so one by one, everyone
go home.
Yeah. One by one, everyone was canceling. And so we called the venue and we said, all right, obviously we can't go forward with it. And at that point, they charged us money for it, which was ridiculous. And then they said, all right, we'll do it next year. Well, the year came and it was even harder to do it because there was all these government restrictions on it. And so we couldn't have it. And, at some point when we could have it, it would have been like 10 people allowed in face masks and no drinking. So it obviously wasn't what we bargained for. And so, fortunately, my father-in-law, put it on his credit card to get the points or whatever. And then Amex gave it back to him. So years went by and now all of a sudden they're suing us, or they're suing my father-in-law for that money. Now, no jury in the world and no judge in the world is going to say you have a valid case. I'm almost 100% confident based on the law, and we've done all the research and everything, that the case would be lost. Now, it may not be dismissed on like a motion to dismiss it. And so they know that. And so we have a company, a corporation suing an individual. So the company has a lot more resources, a lot more, finances to do this. They have a lawyer probably on retainer that does 50 of these a year for them. Whereas the individual, without any regard or discussion as to that person's private wealth, they don't have, typically most people don't have money to pay a lawyer, because in these cases, it's not contingency fee, especially when you're defending a case, you're having to pay someone a very handsome hourly rate, and you have to pay their paralegals an hourly rate, and everyone gets an hourly rate.
Yeah, I couldn't hire a contingency attorney. I had to hire my trial business attorney and pay that very expensive high rate.
Exactly, because on the defense side, when you get sued, it's not a contingency. You're trying to have them pay as little as possible. So there's nothing to take a contingent fee from. And so they know that, right? So they're going to sue and make motions and live,
prolong it.
Yeah. Juice those bills up as much as they can, because they want you to cave and settle. And so I know that they can't win, but at some point it becomes a sort of business decision. Are you going to pay $50,000 to defend it, or are you going to give them $20,000 to get rid of it, just using made up numbers because it's less, even though in your heart it's wrong. In the law it's wrong, and they know it too. And so it's funny because the lawyer, because I don't want to. I have too many emotions involved, so I can't handle it personally. I don't even do that field of law. I want to make sure it's all good. The lawyer I've been speaking to about it is sort of saying, listen, there's a couple lawyers that I'm sure in your field you have on your list of, your hit list, or, bad people, so to speak. The lawyer that they're using is number one on everyone's list in New York and New Jersey, this collections attorney, as the man with no integrity that will do everything. And so there's really nothing you can do other than try to make the best decision. And so, I know that that's how it is. I know lawyers like that give us a bad rap. And, to that, I just say, it's a small fraction. There's bad doctors, there's bad teachers, there's bad financial advisors that do unethical and improper stuff. And so I just ask people to don't judge us all by that. But, I know from experience what it's like, and I try to use that experience to, help me convey to my clients and other people what the right way to go about it is.
Yeah. And someday I'll tell the full story, because it's worth hearing. And there's so many lessons in it. At the end of the day, you made a great point there. What I had to decide, and I ask this question often, and I think I've said it on episodes before, but what is the wise decision?
Yeah. Yep.
Right. So
so hard.
My attorney,
feelings and emotions.
Oh my gosh, it's so hard. Like, look, someone was questioning and challenging my ethos and integrity as a human being, calling me essentially a racist, and putting that out publicly. Like, right. So, and actually I would tell you that my wife had a harder time with me choosing to settle than I did, because I could sit back and go, look, I got to calculate the time. And so I went to my attorney and I said, what is the time cost, like actual quantifiable cost to go through this trial, interview all the witnesses, depose all them, go through the trial. What are you going to cost the whole team? And then on top of that cost, I got to weigh out, what is my emotional capital? Between now and the end of that trial, how much is that going to take me away from my family, my business, and my own personal just well-being during that time frame? And at the end of the day, what we got the number to is I end up settling. And now it's funny, I hear him out there in the community lying about the number. Just dude can't stop lying. But it's just interesting. Like, you got to understand where you're at, and you got to make the wise decision. Like Matt said, it's a business decision. You got to try and remove emotions the best you can. And look, I can tell you that was freaking hard with what I was being accused of. It is hard, but you got to sit back, detach, and make a wise decision, and have some wise counsel. Like, my attorney was good. He said, Josh, like, I think you should. I know you can win this, but like, what if we get a jury with a hair up their ass to,
you never know.
You just never know. You're buying yourself certainty.
100%.
So anyhow, I want to talk about that because that was a big reason why I had you on the show, is having an attorney with integrity on versus there are going to be out there some of these billboard attorneys that are just looking to make a payday and make themselves wealthy versus actually doing the right thing.
Yep.
So really appreciate you taking the time today, taking time out of your busy schedule to pour into our audience. I got one final question for you.
Okay.
Let's see how an attorney answers this without dodging. What's an unpopular belief that you hold to be true that most others would disagree with?
Oof, that's tough. And by the way, thank you for having me on again. I really, really appreciate it. It was a great conversation. Let's see, because I just read or I listened to Matt Higgins' book, Burn the Boats. So let me say, so I agree with that overall principle of, burn the boats, be all in on your mission and what you want to do. But like anything, I think a lot of these, quotes or ideas or anything, even politics, everything has to be used in extremes these days. It's either, all this or all that without any area in between. So yes, burn the boats. I agree with when you know what you want to do and you go all in. But even within that, I think it's sometimes smart to have some contingency plans, in the book and people who say, burn the boats, don't have any backup plans, all of that. I'm not saying, go into something and say, all right, if it doesn't work, if the overall plan doesn't work, then I'm going to be a doctor, whatever, or then I'm going to go to this field or I'm going to go to that field. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that within your plan, within your strategy, I think it's okay to say, hey, if this aspect doesn't work, I'm going to shift this way. So I just think that, and again, that's on top of my mind because I listened to that book. Just the people run with that, burn the boats. I'm just gonna, have this one plan and just go with it, because I can just talk from my experience when I'm on trial. And again, I try to prepare for everything, but different judges, with the same case, the same facts, different judge can rule one way or another way. So I never know what's going to happen. So I sort of have to have like a tree. If he rules this way, I'm going to say this. If he rules that way, I'm going to have that. I'm going to go with that argument. So if I were to just say, burn the boats, I'm just going to go with this, plan, I'd be caught with my pants down. So I guess that's my best answer to the question now, is just, I don't fully believe that you should burn the boats and only have one plan in mind. I think it's okay to have some contingency plans. Like, I think SEAL Team 6 or those type of military organizations will have some sort of contingency plans if things go wrong for that very reason.
Well, that's what I was actually thinking as you were talking is, any military personnel that's seen active combat knows that a good plan does not survive first point of contact.
Right.
Meaning as soon as a bullet flies, the plan's out the window.
Right. Like everyone says, the Mike Tyson quote, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. So I think you need to have a little bit of a idea of what are you going to do in different situations.
Yep. And you fall back to your training. So man, really good, really, really good stuff. Where can people follow you or contact you should they want to?
Awesome. I appreciate that. You could always find me at Segal Law Firm, Segal Law Firm. My Instagram handle is Matt_Segal_ESQ, or Segal-lawfirm.com. I mean, reach out to me if you have any questions about anything. I'm always here. Like I tell my clients, I'm not one of these lawyers that hides behind a paralegal or a secretary. You'll always get me, especially if you're a young attorney or you're in law school and you want to get some guidance or feedback. Again, I'm going to be launching a coaching program for that whole area, because again, the value of coaching and stuff. If I could speak to me, I could have spoken to me, a couple of years ago where I'm at now, I could have been where I am now a couple of years ago. So again, feel free to reach out to me, and I thank you for your time, Josh. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you bet.
And I look forward to the next event at your farm.
Hey, door is always open for you. I'm also convinced that there's probably a percentage of attorneys out there that become attorneys just so they can put Esquire after their last name.
It's funny you mentioned, I never did. And then, my old Instagram handle was like an old sports nickname I had. And I said, all right, I gotta mature a little bit. And I was trying to just put my name, and everything was taken already. So I added the ES.
So you added that. You definitely know them out there. They're probably putting Esquire behind everything. They introduce themselves to girls at the bar. Hey, I'm Matt Segal, Esquire.
Not me, man.
I know. All right, brother. Great to have you. Spartans, you know what to do. Share this episode far and wide. And remember, the good and great are the enemies of possible. Lead like a Spartan today.